buying half of all the gold in the world being mined in 2026. Crazy, eh? So what is that going to do to gold? Let's think about that. Gold did 65% in 2025. We started talking about gold miners around about May last year. Go back to watch my old videos or ask any of my students. And a lot of those returned pretty nicely. Right? The S&P did 18%. But it's a bigly gap, right? It's a bigly ugly gap. It's a 47% gap between gold's returns and S&P returns. What happened? The gold bugs are like the smuggest people in the world, and everyone else got poorer. Let's look at the biggest buyers: Poland, China, Brazil. Those guys own a lot of gold now. Poland has 28% of their reserves in gold. The Poles are pretty smart people. China has been buying for the last 13 months every single month. Probably buying more than they're officially putting out there, but they're buying a lot. And think about it. Poland is a border country with Russia. China is in a Cold War with the US, essentially. Brazil is leading the BRICS nations away from the dollar dependence. So they're not just buying gold because I think it's a good investment. They're buying gold because they don't trust the US anymore. The real advantage of gold is that there is no counterparty risk. It's different from every other asset class. When you own US debt, a treasury bond, you're trusting the US government to pay you back in dollars. When you own a corporate bond, you're trusting that company. When you own a stock, you're trusting management, earnings reports, the whole system. When you own gold, you're trusting gold. Right? Gold doesn't have a CEO, can't commit fraud, doesn't have a government that can print more of it, it doesn't have a counterparty risk, and the risk that the other guy won't hold up to his end of the deal. It's just there. It's shiny. It's very shiny. Just look at it. So Dalio calls gold the safest money for exactly this reason. And this is a guy who made all of his money in stocks, right, and investments, so things that they can just sort of make up. So in a world where even allies don't trust each other anymore, Poland's an ally of the US, right? Gold's the only thing everybody agrees on to have some value. So when central banks were the ones who are printing all the money, and they're going to print a lot of money in 2026, it'll be like one of the good years for money printers. If they don't want to hold money, it tells you quite a lot, doesn't it, really? And you've heard of the trade wars, the tariffs, the quotas, all that stuff. Capital wars are very different. Capital wars are when money becomes the weapon. So here's what Dalio is warning about. He says trade wars are evolving into capital wars. Countries aren't just fighting over goods anymore. They are fighting over the flow of money that finances trade. That includes freezing or seizing assets, blocking access to capital markets, so access to the stock exchange, dumping US dollar debt in dollar-denominated securities, weaponizing payment systems like SWIFT. So, but the real turning point here came, and it's not a popular thing to say because, everyone likes to hate the Russians. I know some lovely Russian people. But anyway, what happened in 2022 is that the moment everything changed is when the US and allies froze Russian reserves after the Ukraine invasion number 2. They seized hundreds of billions of dollars in Russian assets. They got kicked out of SWIFT, which is the international payment system if you want to transfer money, and they made it impossible for them to access the global financial system. And every other country on earth was like, you can do that? Hey, what if you did that to us? What if you thought we were the bad guy for the moment, right? I'm not saying the Russians are not the bad guys. This is not about that. This is about how you protect yourself and your family. This is what this is about. Because these countries all realized if you hold your reserves in dollars, if you keep your money in the Western financial system, it can be taken away instantly if you piss off Washington, right? Talk to any deposed dictator in the world, whether they keep their money with the lovely Swissies, right? I had some great fondue the other day. What do they do each time? They freeze the assets. And they just keep it. They just keep it. There's apparently a Swiss banking system structure. So countries think we're next. The Saudis watch. They think maybe we shouldn't be so dependent on these people. The Indians, the Brazilians, the South Africans. Everyone's thinking like, what will be the alternative here? The countries are building new financial infrastructure to bypass the dollar. Russia now has a system that is an alternative to the SWIFT system. China has the cross-border interbank payment system, handles hundreds of billions of dollars, by the way. And there's BRICS Pay under development. So these guys are all reducing their US dollar usage. And the dollar isn't going to go away, it's just going to be worth a lot less. And the the BRICS currency project, called the unit, they're building a partially gold-backed currency. Maybe you think partially backed sounds nonsense. Well, that's how the US got off the gold standard, right? Initially, it was partially backed by it, and then it was not backed by anything other than great. And you are great. You're very great. That's been launched, and it's meant to be used as the trading currency between those nations. So this is no longer some fringe conspiracy, right? This is official policies from countries that represent almost half the world's population, more than a third of the world's GDP. Now, Winston here will tell you that there is a problem that most people don't know about. There is $9.2 trillion in existing government debt that matured last year. So the US government had to refinance $9 trillion in debt, issue new bonds, pay off old bonds. Why does that matter? Because interest rates are higher now than when the debt was originally issued. So the US is refinancing cheap debt with expensive debt. Every time one of these bonds matures, which is how they work, they have an expiration date, the US interest payment goes up. And there's a huge amount, the largest amount of debt ever, has to be refinanced in the next 2 years. So the US government has to get interest rates down, come what may. So they're going to appoint a BlackRock chap to run the Fed who will make sure interest rates will be low. What's that going to do to your money? Well, it's going to cause more and more inflation. It's the only way they can keep this debt ratio down, because they are at a really, really dangerous place already. But within that, you've got to factor in that foreign buyers are disappearing. They're not buying the debt anymore. Interest rates are higher. So even if you lower interest rates, this is the thing that is hard to explain. You can lower interest rates as a government, but interest rates in the real world can still go up. Why? Because the market sees more risk. The market is saying, we think you guys are crazy. We think you are fiscally irresponsible. Right? I prefer crazy. And therefore, we're going to demand higher interest anyway. Otherwise, we won't buy your debt. And that matters to you because it trickles down to your mortgage, your car payments, your credit card payments, all that stuff, right? So the government is trying to control some of those things, 10% cap on credit cards, which sounds like a sweet idea, doesn't it? But the problem is that it means that those on lower incomes will find it impossible to get any credit. Maybe that's the plan. Who knows? That'll be the side effect of it. So it doesn't work, right? There's a reason credit card companies charge high interest. They could lower it by a bit, undoubtedly. They could particularly lower it for those with higher incomes, but those people tend to pay off their credit card every month anyway, so it's not really an issue for them. It's the lower guys you're going to cut off from credit, but that's not really what this is about. It's not a political statement, it's just an economic fact. But really, the only path is inflation. And as Ray Dalio says, our grandchildren will be paying in devalued dollars. So you got to think about how much of your money is in dollar assets and how you could potentially protect yourself from it. What's Ray Dalio's recommendation? He says 5 to 15% in gold. And I don't think he's wrong on that. It's not financial advice. I'm not a registered financial advisor in any way, shape, or form. Winston might be, golden retriever registered or something. But yeah, I think it's a reasonable thing to think about. Now, there's a risk with that, as in where do you store the stuff? And I would put it in some private storage. Banks I don't trust. Private storage companies I trust slightly more. Having it at home, for most people, is a daft idea. Now, if you live on some sort of ranch and you're heavily armed in the middle of nowhere, then that's probably fine. I have a friend who said that to me. He said, I have a shotgun and I have 12 large dogs. I'm like, okay, you're probably okay. But if you live in a condo in a city somewhere or something, it's probably a pretty poor idea to keep your gold at home. So why gold? The counterparty risk. The hedge against debasement, the government involved. It has literally been the money for 5,000 years, probably longer, but the Egyptians don't need to know about that one. That's a whole other story we could open up, but we shan't. What's under the Sphinx? I want to know. What about Bitcoin? Look, Bitcoin is 15 years old, volatile. It could be banned. It could be regulated. At the moment, we're getting some pretty friendly crypto regulation. I am suspicious of Bitcoin. I think there are 3 letters that might have something to do with it, and you can draw your own conclusions from that. But I don't really trust it personally, and you might disagree with that. That's all good, and I hope you make a ton of money with it. But gold, it's physical. There is a physical problem with getting it out of the ground. It's a pain in the neck. To open a gold mine takes 16 years on average. So you're not going to get massive supply come on stream all that quickly. So you've got to ask yourself, who do you trust in a real crisis? I think the whole crypto thing is just, it's one of those things. They spun it as decentralization isn't glorious. It's the most centralized thing in the world. You can track every transaction forever. It's like you become transparent as someone who pays with it. What about gold, beyond gold? Look, you could buy some international stocks, but the problem is the Europeans have the same problem. They're going to do the same thing. The Japanese have had the same problem for 30 years. Where else do you buy stocks? So I don't think that really fixes the problem. You could have cash. That's definitely going to get burned. Some people say that. That doesn't really work very well either. So there aren't really that many choices here. So how do you buy gold? Look, you can find online some reputable, ask AI, what is a reputable gold dealer in my country or area, and it'll find you some. You can buy coins, you can buy bars, storing something you want to think about. There's some storage costs associated to that, and which obviously insurance and so on. There are ETFs. There's GLD, IAU, PHYS. Letters are difficult for me today, and those are physically backed, in my understanding. Now, I haven't audited those. I don't know what they've got in their cellars, but apparently if you buy GLD, those guys will go out and they'll buy physical gold. That's the story, at least. Mining stocks. We put out something on that earlier this week, so check that out. Higher risk, potentially higher reward, but you need to understand risk management and how to position that and all that kind of stuff. So again, check out the free masterclass down below. My mission is to get you educated. But I would say position yourself before everyone's figured it out. I feel that the mainstream isn't really talking about it yet, so we're still relatively early, despite the massive rally we've seen in gold last year. But once gold hits, $10,000 an ounce, people are going to panic, and you will have missed it. And again, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball. Winston keeps eating them, but Ray Dalio is a smart guy, and I'm sure he's got some business interest in what he's talking about. But he did warn us about 2008, and at the moment, I think this is the key story here that I think we can probably all agree on. Fiat currencies, the stuff you can print, are losing trust and value. Gold is the second reserve currency in the world after the dollar, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be exciting. Your dollars are being devalued. Your stocks go down in real terms unless you really pick very, very good ones. You've got to pick very, very good ones. I'm not saying that isn't possible, but you've got to pick very, very good ones. And what do? Educate yourself. Don't listen to the mainstream media noise and gibber. Diversify. Maybe buy some gold. And that's not an instruction. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just saying, think about it, because stuff's creaking, stuff's breaking. Not sometime in 2098. No, it's sort of now. So the people running the system, they know it's breaking, and that's why they're buying gold. So I always say, follow the money. Don't worry about the whys. Don't worry about the politics, whether you like a politician or not. None of that matters. They're not really there to look after you. No, they have an agenda. They have people who put them there. They're people who paid for the election and all that stuff. And, that happens with all parties and all presidents and every country in the world. And that's just the system we live in. And it's a pretty decent system compared to the alternative, right? Just look at a map of South and North Korea and you get the idea. So I hope this is helpful to you. If it is, share it with more people, please. That will be my only ask. And I wish you great success. All the best. Something absolutely wild just happened in the mining sector, and I need to tell you about it right now. The US government just wrote a $1.6 billion check to one mining company.
What happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic.
There are things happening in the Arctic now that would have been unthinkable 20 years ago.
This is the region warming faster than anywhere else on Earth.
silver has absolutely exploded so far in 2026, blowing straight through levels that have capped it for decades. Monetary metals and hard assets everywhere are waking up at the same time, but Bitcoin continues to kick dust. This has led a lot of people, especially gold and silver bugs, to declare victory. But what if silver's breakout isn't the end of the story? What if it's the final nail in the coffin of a monetary system under extreme stress? Because once you understand why silver and gold are moving like this, and why critics like Peter Schiff are suddenly everywhere again, you'll understand exactly what comes next, and why, historically, Bitcoin always moves last. Welcome to No Second Best, the show where conviction meets reality, and reality points straight to Bitcoin. I'm your host, Hurley. Now let's get into it. Silver doesn't usually move like this. It doesn't drift, it doesn't grind, and it definitely doesn't explode unless something underneath the system is under stress. Silver is a strange asset. It sits right at the intersection of money, industry, leverage, and speculation. Silver markets are smaller, more opaque, and more heavily shorted than gold. That makes violent moves in silver uniquely dangerous for the financial system. When silver breaks out violently like it did this month, it's not just price discovery, it's stress testing leverage. That's why some people are starting to ask an uncomfortable question. What happens if silver doesn't just rally, but forces someone on the other side to fail? Historically, when silver starts behaving badly, it's a signal. Gold tends to confirm monetary stress, and silver tends to expose it. And right now, both are flashing at the same time. And this isn't just theoretical stress. You can point to exactly where it's showing up. Just look at Japan. Japan has the highest debt to GDP ratio in the developed world. Its central bank has been the most aggressive money printer on the planet for decades. And now Japanese government bond yields are at their highest level since the mid-1990s. This is not just a normal move. This is the bond market pushing back. The yen has become the canary in the coal mine for fiat currencies. When the world's most controlled bond market starts to break, it tells you something much bigger is underway. So gold and silver aren't reacting to inflation headlines, they're reacting to sovereign balance sheets starting to fail stress tests. So gold continues to have its best run ever, now up over 80% in 1 year. Silver is ripping faces off, up an eye-watering 200% in the last year. Meanwhile, Bitcoin continues to grind sideways and down. In fact, Bitcoin is on pace to finish its 4th straight month in the red. Sentiment is now as bad as it's been in all of its short history. This has led many monetary metal maxis to do victory laps online. But it's at times like this that we need to slow things down and zoom out. Let's not forget, over the last 10 years, Bitcoin is up 48,000%, while gold is only up 226%, and the S&P 500 is up about the same. Is that too far back for you? What about since 2019? Over the last 6 years, Bitcoin is up nearly 1,300%. That even dwarfs silver's 588% and gold's 300%. If you didn't know these numbers, you'd totally think Bitcoin has been a disappointment. In the short term, sure, it's definitely been underwhelming. You can cherry pick any short-term data and draw misleading conclusions. In reality, Bitcoin has been the single largest repricing of capital in modern financial history. So the real question isn't what's wrong with Bitcoin. The real question is, why does Bitcoin always and consistently feel the worst right before it matters the most? Here's something that many are missing and that I pointed out in the last episode. Bitcoin is in a bear market, just not in dollars. When you price Bitcoin in gold instead of fiat, a very consistent pattern appears. Every cycle, Bitcoin bleeds against gold for about 14 months. Every cycle, that bleed ends quietly, and every cycle, Bitcoin then violently reverses. This is where we are right now. January 2026 would be month 14. Now, this doesn't mean Bitcoin can't go lower priced in gold. It just means that this is exactly what accumulation phases have always felt like. Boring, frustrating, and confidence destroying. Now, the obituaries calling for Bitcoin's death might be finally over, as there was none in 2025 for the first time ever. Bitcoin is backed by faith that central banks could never hold it. Let's get something straight. Fiat doesn't mean belief-based. Fiat comes from the Latin term Bible. In the Latin translation of the Hebrew Old Testament, when God says, "Let there be light," the word fiat is used for "let there be." Fiat money is quite literally human beings playing God and decreeing, "Let there be money." Bitcoin is the exact opposite of this. It has no issuer, no committee, no supply discretion, no ability to change the rules. Calling Bitcoin fiat is like calling gravity a government policy. Schiff also leans on an old distinction. Gold is money, and currency is just a claim on money. That framework made sense a century ago, but it doesn't survive in a digital world. Bitcoin isn't a claim on money, it is the settlement asset. It has no counterparty, no redemption risk, and no promise required. Gold is the money that needed layers of paper to scale as the global economy became more interconnected. Bitcoin is the first monetary asset that can act as both global settlement money and medium of exchange currency at the same time. Then Schiff falls back on the same familiar and tired argument against Bitcoin, the greater fool theory.
If Americans want to throw their money away in a lot of these crypto companies, all right, I mean, it's unfortunate, but if the government is now promoting it and pushing money into this industry that might have gone someplace else if it was a free market, this is doing a lot of harm.
Why is it throwing? I mean, you know, you meet all these people who've made hundreds of millions. You meet kids who've made real money from crypto. Why is it throwing it away?
Well, because where did they make it? They didn't make money in crypto because they, produced products that we consume or provide services that improve our lives. The people who've made money in crypto, and I know a lot of them, they've made money in crypto because the crypto that they bought a long time ago went way up.
Well, how is that different from buying gold?
Well, I'm not people. I don't know a lot of people who got rich buying gold, right?
Well, I've done really well, just being honest, and so have you.
No, right? Okay, we've tripled our money. I'm not, right, but I'm talking about people who bought Bitcoin for $1 and now it's $90,000, right? You're talking about people who put
so it's a big run up, but it's the same. But when you buy gold, which I own a gold company, I'm totally for buying gold, but you're not. It's not a creative act. You're not making anything.
No.
You're not making anyone's life better. You're not really adding to the sum total of the economy. You're not doing anything other than buying something low and holding it until it gets high.
Right, but there is a big difference. I'll get to that in a minute. But the people who have made money in crypto, right? They bought it at a very low price, and now other people are buying it at a much higher price, believing that they're going to be able to do the same thing. There are people who are buying Bitcoin now at $90,000, whatever it's at. They're buying it because they think it's going to $1 million. They think they'll be able to sell it at $1 million. And of course, the only reason someone's going to buy it at $1 million is because they think it's going to 10 million, right? So it's all this greater fool theory.
Here's the problem with this argument. As Tucker smartly points out, gold also has no yield and no cash flows. And to counter Schiff's point, there is almost no industrial justification for these prices. People buy gold because they believe others will value it later. It's a trusted, tried and true store of value. Whether Peter wants to admit it or not, Bitcoin and gold are both monetary assets. One is just thousands of years old, and the other is new and still gaining trust as a proven store of value. The difference isn't belief. Both gold and Bitcoin would collapse if trust and belief in it as a store of value went away. The difference is architecture. Owning physical metals feels great until you try to sell them. With this huge spike in silver particularly, the stories of investors trying to sell have popped up online. And it's not as easy or fun as it might seem. Spreads widen, dealers lowball, and liquidity disappears when you need it most. 1,000 ounces of silver might be worth $100,000 on paper, but in practice, you're often lucky to get 70 cents on the dollar. Bitcoin? You can sell $100,000 instantly, 24 hours a day, anywhere on Earth, at market price with very small exchange spreads. It's the most liquid asset on Earth. And if you don't believe me, try it out for yourself. This is where Larry Lepard gets it exactly right. Gold and silver smell debasement first. Bitcoin always reacts later. And when Bitcoin finally moves, it doesn't move politely.
So I think on the next big print, the Fed balance sheet goes from net 6.5 to, I don't know, 10, 15, 20. I mean, some big number, right? And if the entire 38, trillion came at it, it would really go to a big number and would be off on the road to hyperinflation. So that's not my base case, by the way. I think the silver market and gold market are telling us these things are in the works. I mean, gold and silver are really great at smelling this stuff. And there's a chart I put out as well in the past, and it's all over my Twitter feed and others that it showed. And this time reminds me very much of 2020. So the COVID event occurred, the Fed pivoted, they started printing a lot of money quickly. Gold went from 1,200 to 2,000 quite quickly, and Bitcoin just sat there, for months. It was kind of locked between like $7,000 and $10,000, and it just kind of went sideways. And then suddenly it woke up that fall in October, and it just went on a tear. And in the next 6 months, it went from 10 to 60. That's 6x. And so there was, it was kind of like gold moved first, gold smelled it first, and then Bitcoin followed with lag. And I kind of expect the same thing this time. Gold's doing its thing. It's moving. It says the debasement is coming. The debasement will come. Gold will keep running. And then at some point, as the debasement comes and the money flows in, Bitcoin is going to wake up and go from, 90 to 270 or, 3x easily, in my view. So is it tomorrow? No. I mean, I have that as within 6 to 12 months.
Gold added roughly $20 trillion in market cap in 18 months. Silver added over $4 trillion in less than a year. Bitcoin's entire market cap is still under $2 trillion. The idea that Bitcoin is too large now to have massive gains is ridiculous, and gold and silver are glaring examples. Capital is rotating hard into hard assets, and Bitcoin is the hardest. It has a smaller basin, a hard cap, and no supply elasticity. When that dam breaks, it breaks fast. And here's a stat that really puts it into perspective. This month, silver added more market cap than Bitcoin currently has in total. If that kind of repricing is possible in a legacy metal market, the idea that Bitcoin can't move because of size completely collapses. And this is where people start realizing that owning Bitcoin isn't just about conviction. It's about execution. If you're holding meaningful amounts, questions come up fast. How do you hold it securely? What about passing it on to your heirs? How do you hold Bitcoin across decades, not cycles? That's what Swan Private works on every single day. From advanced multi-sig custody to inheritance and estate planning.
More than $6 trillion gone in 60 minutes. If you bought at the top, thoughts and prayers, silver just crashed from $121 to $108. Gold dumped from $5,600 to $5,100. And most people have no idea why. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is staring at their screen watching their portfolio bleed. Liquidations triggering liquidations. A cascade of red. Stop losses getting hunted, leveraged positions getting wiped. And the mainstream financial media, they will tell you it is just volatility. Normal market behavior. Nothing to worry about. They're lying. What happened today is not random. It is not unexplainable. And if you do not understand why this crash happened, you will get destroyed by the next one. But here is the thing. I have seen this exact pattern before. Not months ago, weeks ago, December 2025. The last 2 days of the year, same crash, same panic, same liquidations. And you know what happened next? January exploded. Gold up 30%, silver up 65%, the biggest monthly rally in decades. So is today's crash the end, or is it the beginning of something much bigger? By the end of this video, you will know exactly what caused this crash. You will understand the hidden force that moves gold and silver that most investors completely ignore. And I will show you the historical pattern that could tell us exactly what happens next. But here is what most people will miss. I am going to reveal something that could change how you trade these markets forever. A specific prediction with a specific date. On the record. If you click away before that, you will miss the one thing that could turn this crash. Who saw gold at 5,600 and silver at 121 and thought it is going higher? Thoughts and prayers. Now here is what nobody is telling you. This crash did not come out of nowhere. There were warning signs, clear signals that something was about to break. And let me be real with you about something. This crash was not an accident. Crashes like this never are. Somewhere, someone knew this was coming. The big players, the institutions, the ones with access to information you and I will never see. They saw the Fed signals before you did. They saw the China data before it was public. They positioned themselves before the crash happened. And when it happened, they were ready. They were on the right side. They were the ones buying your panic sells. This is how the game works. It has always worked this way. The question is whether you want to keep being the victim or start understanding how the game is played. But before I show you what caused this, I need you to understand something critical. Gold and silver did not crash because something is wrong with gold and silver. They crashed because of something else entirely. And that something has a name. The DXY. If you do not know what the DXY is, pay attention, because this might be the most important thing you learn today. And I guarantee 90% of retail investors have never even heard of it. DXY stands for the dollar index. It measures the strength of the US dollar against a basket of other major currencies: euro, yen, pound, Swiss franc, Canadian dollar, Swedish krona. When the DXY goes up, it means the dollar is getting stronger compared to these currencies. When the DXY goes down, it means the dollar is getting weaker. Now here is the critical part that will change how you see gold and silver forever. Gold and silver move opposite to the dollar. They are inversely correlated. This is not sometimes. This is not occasionally. This is almost always. Let me explain this simply because it is so important. Gold and silver are priced in dollars. When the dollar gets stronger, it takes fewer dollars to buy the same amount of gold. So the price in dollars goes down. When the dollar gets weaker, it takes more dollars to buy the same amount of gold. So the price in dollars goes up. Think of it like a seesaw on a playground. Dollar sits on one side, gold and silver sit on the other side. When the dollar side goes up, the gold and silver side goes down. When the dollar side goes down, the gold and silver side goes up. They cannot both be up at the same time. They cannot both be down at the same time. The seesaw does not work that way. This is why professional traders do not just watch gold and silver charts. They watch the dollar, they watch the DXY, because the DXY tells you what gold and silver are about to do before they do it. Today, the DXY pumped hard. The dollar surged against other currencies. The dollar side of the seesaw went up, and gold and silver, they got crushed. The other side of the seesaw went down. This is not complicated. This is not some conspiracy. This is not manipulation. This is basic market mechanics that most retail investors completely ignore. They watch gold, they watch silver, they stare at the charts all day, but they never watch the dollar. And then they get surprised when this happens. They call it manipulation. They call it unfair. They do not understand that they were watching the wrong thing. And if you learn nothing else from this video, learn this. Watch the DXY. When the dollar spikes, prepare for pain in metals. When the dollar drops, prepare for gains. And here's the scary part. Most retail investors, they have no idea this relationship exists. They buy gold and silver without ever looking at the dollar. And then they wonder why they keep getting stopped out, why they keep buying at the wrong time, why the market seems rigged against them. It is not rigged. They are just watching the wrong thing. The professionals, the institutions, the hedge funds, they watch the DXY like hawks. They see the dollar spiking and they dump metals before retail even knows what hit them. By the time you see the red candle on your gold chart, they have already sold. You are the exit liquidity. Today, you became exit liquidity for someone else, unless you understand this. Now let me tell you why the dollar pumped today. Because understanding the why helps you predict the next move. There are 3 reasons, and each one is important. Miss any of these and you will not understand the full picture. Reason number 1, the Federal Reserve. The Fed has been sending hawkish signals. For those who do not know, hawkish means they are leaning toward keeping interest rates high or even raising them. Dovish means they want to cut rates. Right now, the Fed is hawkish, very hawkish. Higher interest rates make the dollar more attractive to foreign investors. Why? Because when rates are high, you earn more by holding dollars. You get better yields on treasury bonds. You get better returns on dollar-denominated assets. So what do foreign investors do? They buy dollars, they convert their euros, their yen, their pounds into dollars to get those higher yields. More demand for dollars means dollar price goes up, DXY rises. And when DXY rises, you already know, gold and silver go down. The Fed has not cut rates as much as people expected this year. Everyone thought they would cut aggressively. They did not. They are worried about inflation coming back. They are talking tough. They are saying rates might stay higher for longer. And the market is listening. The market always listens to the Fed. This is reason number one. The Fed is hawkish. Dollar is strong. Metals are weak. Reason number two, China. This one is specifically bad for silver. Pay attention if you hold silver. China's industrial activity is slowing down. The latest data shows manufacturing contracting, factory output declining, economic momentum fading. Now, why does this matter for silver specifically? Remember what I have said before. Silver is not just a precious metal. It is an industrial metal. More than 50% of silver demand comes from industrial uses. Solar panels. Every single one needs silver. Electronics. Your phone has silver in it. Your laptop has silver in it. Electric vehicles. Every EV uses more silver than a regular car. Semiconductors, AI chips, data centers, all need silver. And where is most of this manufacturing happening? China. When China slows down, industrial demand fears spike. Traders start thinking maybe silver demand will drop. Maybe fewer solar panels will be made. Maybe fewer electronics. Maybe less silver will be needed. Fear hits, selling starts, and silver, being more volatile than gold, being more tied to industrial demand, crashes harder than gold. This is why silver dropped 11%, while gold dropped 9%. The China news hit silver harder because silver is an industrial metal. This is reason number two. China is slowing. Industrial demand fears are rising. Silver is getting hit, and I wish I could tell you that is the worst of it. But it gets worse. Reason number three. U.S. government shutdown, January 31st, 2 days from now. The U.S. government is heading toward a shutdown if Congress does not pass a funding bill. Now, shutdowns have happened before. They are usually temporary. They usually get resolved. But markets do not like uncertainty. Markets do not like political chaos. When there is uncertainty, traders reduce risk. They take profits. They move to the sidelines. They sell first and ask questions later. After the massive rally we had this month, there was a lot of profit sitting on the table. Gold up 30%, silver up 65%. People were sitting on huge gains. A lot of those people were looking for an excuse to take profits, looking for a reason to sell some of their position, lock in some gains. The shutdown fears gave them that excuse. It was not the only reason, but it was the trigger, the excuse that let people justify selling. This is reason number three, political uncertainty, profit-taking, risk reduction. 3 reasons coming together at the same time. Fed hawkish, China slowing, shutdown looming. Each one alone might have caused a small dip. All 3 together, all 3 hitting at the same moment. Result, more than $6 trillion evaporated in 60 minutes. Now let me show you something that most people do not understand. The relationship between gold and silver. A lot of people think gold and silver move together, same direction, same intensity. That is dangerously wrong. Yes, they move in the same direction, but not with the same intensity. Silver is gold on steroids. When gold moves 5%, silver moves 10 to 12%. In the same direction, but with double the intensity. Gold goes up 10%, silver goes up 20%. Gold crashes 8%, silver crashes 15 to 20. Look at what happened today. Gold dropped about 9%, from 5,600 to 5,100. Silver dropped almost 11%, from 121 to 108. This is not coincidence. This is the silver multiplier effect. Gold leads, silver follows, but silver follows with amplified intensity. This is why silver made 65% gains this month, while gold made 30%. This is why silver crashed harder today. If you are trading silver, you need to understand this. Silver will make you rich faster, but it will also destroy you faster. The leverage cuts both ways. Now let me show you something fascinating. Look at Monday. Just a few days ago, we had another crash, but that crash was different. On Monday, silver crashed 14%, but gold only dropped 2%. Why? Because Monday's crash was silver-specific. It was driven by industrial demand fears, China news, silver-specific selling. Today's crash is different. Today, both gold and silver crashed together. Gold down 9%, silver down 11%. When both crash together like this, it tells you the cause is different. It is not silver-specific, it is a macro cause. And today's macro cause? The dollar. The DXY pumped. Both metals dumped. This is important to understand because it tells you what to watch. If you want to predict the next crash, watch the dollar. Not just gold, not just silver, the dollar. When the DXY spikes, prepare for pain. Now here is where it gets interesting. And this is the part you really need to pay attention to. I have seen this exact pattern before. Not years ago, not months ago, weeks ago, December 2025. The last 2 days of the year, December 30th and 31st. Same thing happened. Almost identical setup. Sharp crash out of nowhere. Panic selling everywhere. Liquidations cascading through the system. Red candles stacking. Weak hands getting destroyed. The sentiment was absolutely terrible. Social media was full of doom. People were calling for the end of the bull market. They said the rally was over. Gold and silver are finished. The top is in. Fear was maxed out. Despair was everywhere. And then January happened. January 2026. This month. The month we are still in. Gold up 30% in a single month. Silver up 65% in a single month. Record highs broken. Not just broken. Shattered. The biggest monthly rally in over 40 years. All those people who panicked in December, who sold at the bottom because they were scared, who listened to the doom and gloom. They watched the rocket launch without them. They sold low. They missed everything. Now look at today, January 29th, 2 days before the end of the month. Sharp crash, panic selling, liquidations cascading, same pattern, same timing, same fear. The question is, will February repeat January? Will we see another mega pump? Let me show you why I think we might. First, understand what has not changed. This is critical. The crash today was about the dollar, about the Fed, about short-term fear, about paper hands getting shaken out, but the fundamentals, the big picture, the stuff that actually matters, none of that changed, not one bit. While you were panicking, Tether was still buying 1 to 2 tons of gold every single week. They did not stop because of a 60-minute crash. They do not care about your fear. They are accumulating. While you were watching red candles, BRICS nations were still stacking. China, Russia, India. They did not sell today. They bought. They always buy the dips. They have been doing this for years. While you were refreshing your portfolio, the de-dollarization trend was still accelerating. Countries are still moving away from the dollar. That did not reverse in 60 minutes. While you were questioning everything, the supply deficit in silver was still real. 5 consecutive years of deficit. Mines are still depleting. That did not change today. You know what changed today? Sentiment. That is it. Just sentiment. The question is, are we still in a bull market? Look at the evidence. Gold is still up huge on the year. Even after today's crash, silver is still up massive. Even after today's dump, central banks are still buying. Record purchases. The dollar's long-term trend is still down. Today was a spike, not a reversal. Nothing suggests the bull market is over. Everything suggests this is a correction within a larger uptrend. But I could be wrong. And I know what some of you are thinking right now. Here he goes again. Another YouTube guy telling me to hold through the pain. Another person saying, buy the dip. I have heard this before. Look, I get it. I really do. You are tired. You are scared. You just watched your portfolio drop double digits in an hour. The last thing you want to hear is some guy telling you to stay calm. But here's the thing. I am not telling you what to do. I'm showing you the data. I'm showing you the patterns. I am showing you what has happened before in identical situations. What you do with that information is your choice. I am just trying to make sure you have all the facts before you make that choice. That is why I want to give you both scenarios. And then I'm going to give you a specific prediction on the record. Scenario 1, the bull continues. This crash is exactly like December, a shakeout before the next leg up. February starts strong. New highs by March. Silver breaks 150. Gold breaks 6,000. Probability, I would say 60%. Scenario 2, more pain coming. The Fed gets more hawkish. Dollar keeps rising. China data gets worse. We see another crash. Gold tests 4,800. Silver tests 90. Probability, I would say 30%. Scenario 3, the chop zone. We go sideways. No new highs. No major crash. Just choppy, frustrating price action for weeks. Traders get bored. Retail gives up. Then the move comes when nobody expects it. Probability, I would say 10%. Now here is my specific prediction. The one I told you about at the beginning. Silver will be back above $120 by February 15th. Not by March, not by summer, by February 15th. 17 days from now, here is why. This crash brought silver from 121 to 108, $13 down. That is a lot in 60 minutes. But it is nothing compared to the rally we just had. The pattern from December says we bounce. The fundamentals say we bounce. The oversold conditions say we bounce. And February 15th, that is when the shutdown drama will be resolved one way or another. That is when the fear subsides. That is when buyers come back. $120. February 15th. On the record. Screenshot this. Hold me accountable. Which scenario do you think plays out? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. Now let me give you some practical takeaways, because knowing what happened is useless if you do not know what to do about it. If you are holding physical gold and silver, my advice is simple. Do nothing. Physical metal is not a trade. It is not something you buy and sell based on daily price movements. Physical metal is insurance. It is long-term savings. It is wealth preservation. You do not sell your insurance policy because the stock market had a bad day. You do not cash out your savings account because there was a market crash. Physical metal is the same. You do not have a loss until you sell. Until you sell, it is just a number on a screen. It does not affect your life. It does not change how many ounces you own. If you bought physical silver at $100 an ounce, you still own that silver. It is still in your possession. The crash did not take it from you. Ignore the daily noise. Come back in 6 months. Come back in a year. The fundamentals have not changed. The long-term thesis has not changed. Only the short-term price changed. If you are trading with leverage, today was your wake-up call. Leverage in volatile markets is a death sentence. Not might be. Is. Liquidations triggering liquidations. That phrase should haunt you, because that is exactly what happens when leveraged traders get caught on the wrong side. You think you are smart. You think you can handle the volatility. You think your stop loss will protect you. And then price gaps down. Your stop loss gets skipped. You get liquidated at a price way worse than you expected. Your account is gone. This happens every single time there's a sharp crash. Leveraged traders get wiped out every single time. If you're using leverage on gold or silver, reduce it dramatically or eliminate it entirely. The gains are not worth the risk of total wipeout. If you're waiting on the sidelines with cash, this might be your moment. The best time to buy is when there is blood in the streets, when fear is everywhere, when people are panicking, when red candles are stacking. That is when smart money accumulates. Hurts. I understand. But you have two choices right now. Choice one, panic sell at the bottom and lock in your loss. Make the loss permanent. Transfer your wealth to whoever is buying from you right now. Choice two, hold through the volatility and wait for the recovery. Accept that you bought at a bad time, but recognize that bad timing is not the same as a bad investment. If the fundamentals are still good, if the long-term thesis is still intact, then your only mistake was timing. And timing mistakes get corrected over time. History favors the patient, but you have to be able to survive the drawdown emotionally. You have to be able to watch red without panicking. You have to be able to hold when everyone else is selling. Can you do that? Only you know the answer. Now let me address something important. Some of you are scared right now. You are watching your portfolio and feeling sick. You are wondering if you made a mistake. Let me give you some perspective. In 2020, gold crashed 30% in March. People panicked. They sold. They said gold is dead. By August, gold hit all-time highs. In 2008, silver crashed 50%. People said silver would never recover.
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link description below. Today we have breaking news coming out of the Middle East, as the Islamic Republic of Iran is continuing to make wartime preparations, and has announced that they are prepared to blockade and mine the Strait of Hormuz to stop the flow of oil out of the Middle East. Meanwhile, the United States of America is continuing to build up forces within the area, with significant air flights being conducted out of the United States of America with the hopes of further reinforcing and building up U.S. forces within CENTCOM's area of responsibility. Outside of that, the Russian Federation has also announced that they are prepared to evacuate all of their personnel and scientists out of the area of the Bushehr nuclear power plant, which are currently working on constructing a new reactor within the area. Outside of that, the Islamic Republic of Iran's government has also made it clear that they will be trying their best effort to give it a real shot, as they have also announced, according to the mayor of Tehran, that underground parking lots will be used as emergency bunkers in a wartime scenario, which is expected to be coming incredibly soon. We've also heard that the Islamic Republic of Iran will be conducting naval exercises, possibly with Russia and China, within the area of the Gulf of Oman and the Northern Arabian Sea. Meanwhile, inside of the Russian Federation, the armed forces of Ukraine appear to have been able to cause more damage than ever believed, as power blackouts are now gripping the outskirts of St. Petersburg. We've also seen power blackouts gripping Penza, and also on top of that, the Russian Federation, while dealing with significant power outages in multiple cities throughout the country, not just St. Petersburg and Penza, but also Belgrade and Murmansk, is announcing that they are still rejecting yet another peace deal, with the members of the Russian government like Ramzan Kadyrov completely opposing any form of an attempted negotiation with the state of Ukraine from this point onwards. The Republic of Belarus has also been able to receive a batch of 2 new Su-30SMs, which is an incredibly limited number considering that the Russian Federation is already dealing with wartime woes inside of their country. We've also seen inside of Europe that the Federal Republic of Germany is now going to be developing its own independent satellite detection system to be able to detect satellites outside of the US's intelligence and technological capabilities, while the Belgians have also announced through the European Union Parliament, along with the entirety of the European Union, that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is now officially a terrorist organization. Cuba is also feeling the weight of the United States coming against them, as it's now been announced that they most likely only have 15 to 20 days of oil left before the oil completely runs out and the very non-existent power grid within Cuba goes completely offline. We have all of this news to cover, and we're going to be making sure to get through each and every single bit of it here in this video, starting with our largest stories first, which are coming directly out of the Middle East. The Islamic Republic of Iran has been watching as the United States of America has been building up a significant force within the area, including the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, along with a larger amount of U.S. Air Force assets that have also been deployed at the Al Adid Air Base, also several other air bases within Saudi Arabia, and the Muwafaq Air Base within the Kingdom of Jordan. Further U.S. flights are being conducted already over the course of this day, as we have been able to see a large number of KC-46 Pegasus tankers, mostly all gold 31, 32, 41, and 42, which are all currently flying out of the New England area of the United States and across the Atlantic, most likely towards the United Kingdom, to then carry on their flight towards the Middle East. We also saw near to the coast of Florida today that several KC-135 tankers were also taking off as well. Correction, that's actually a KC-46, most likely with some fighter aircraft or multi-roles in tow, maybe even likely F-35As. In general, there has been a humongous number of airlifts that have been conducted over the past 24 hours into the Middle East, including the WC-135R nuclear sniffer, which is currently at the Ramstein Air Base in Germany, but is expected to transit to the Middle East here soon, along with 4 refueling aircraft and 6 EA Growlers, which are suppression of enemy air defense and electronic warfare aircraft. And we've also been able to see that 9 C-17s, most likely carrying air defense batteries, have also flown out of the United States, generally from around the area of Fort Hood towards to the area of the Middle East. It's believed that these may have been carrying the THAAD missile defense systems that we've already heard about in prior days, still showing us the absolute size and scale of the U.S. airlift that's currently being conducted into the Middle East. While all of this has been going on, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been watching with a great deal of concern, considering that this force is largely a strike force being built up directly against their country. And for this reason, the Iranians have continued to threaten extreme measures to try and see that they can either put pressure on America's allies within the region to pressure us to back off, or to put enough pressure on the United States that they believe that an attack may be too costly in terms of munitions, as we have been able to hear an announcement today that the Iranians are warning that they may possibly blockade the Strait of Hormuz, and they have also threatened all-out war with the entirety of the region. This video footage was published today from an Islamic Republic of Iran source, which generally appears to be stock footage of the U.S. Navy, while they speak about the threat to blockade the Strait of Hormuz to the international world. The Strait of Hormuz is an incredibly narrow passage between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United Arab Emirates and Oman. The stretch is only about 30 miles wide at its greatest, and generally is a bottleneck between the areas of the Persian Gulf and the greater Indian Ocean out to the east. If the Islamic Republic of Iran was to mine this strait, it could cause significant damage to global oil markets, as a large amount of the oil currently produced in the Middle East would never be able to be transported outside of the region. This would also give us the understanding that the Islamic Republic of Iran is threatening the global economy at this point with further retaliatory action if the United States of America tries to conduct a war against them. We also are able to get additional detail that they've warned that they will be planning to run a drill next week that will include live fire exercises within the Strait of Hormuz, which once again is an incredibly important passageway. With it being an incredibly important passageway, and not only that, exceptionally narrow, it is believed that they will be conducting a live fire exercise within international waters to generally close off passage to oil tankers for the limited period of time that that military exercise is being conducted, largely conveying the threat that they could make that sort of an arrangement a permanent one if they would believe it necessary if the United States was to attempt strikes on the country. Still, that does not appear to be dissuading the United States, as we do already have counter forces in the area if the Iranians attempt to lay a minefield. Within the Bahrain Naval Station, there are 3 littoral combat ships of the USS Independence class that are already prepared for counter-mine warfare, and we also believe that there may be one SSGN, which is a nuclear-powered submarine within the area, but we're not really sure on that one. The LCSs don't add any strike capacity against the Islamic Republic of Iran, but they do provide anti-mine countermeasures within the area. The Independence class LCS, and let me go and get one of those for y'all really quickly, right here. The Independence class LCS is a fairly small sort of a corvette if we were to describe it properly. Although technically the definition of this vessel is actually a littoral combat ship, which is very similar in size to that of a frigate. Nevertheless, these vessels are used generally in special operations, nothing that would be considered a actual surface combatant operation, say of an Arleigh Burke or a Ticonderoga class cruiser, and for that reason, these are actually well acclimated to anti-mine countermeasures, meaning that these vessels could enter the area of the Strait of Hormuz and attempt, most likely under heavy fire, to reopen the strait to commercial traffic, largely ridding the area of any sort of sea mines that the Iranians may deploy and trying to keep the passage open. However, one thing that is quite interesting, however, is that these vessels are currently moored at the area of the Bahrain Naval Station, and in prior military actions conducted by the United States against Iran last year, it was seen that the Bahrain Naval Station was completely evacuated before any forms of strikes were to be conducted. The reason for this is because the Persian Gulf, once the Strait of Hormuz is closed, is largely a barrel, and the Iranians can shoot at the fish in the barrel. We generally want to avoid that sort of a situation because if we are stuck in that area, there's no way for the U.S. Navy's ships, including these LCSs, to be able to escape Iranian fire at any given moment. Unlike the Carrier Strike Group, which can steam south further into the Arabian Sea and out of Iranian missile fire, these vessels would not be able to do that because they would have to try and run the gauntlet of the Strait of Hormuz, which would be even more dangerous than the Persian Gulf, with munitions most likely depleted by the time they tried to make a run for it. For this reason, we're still waiting to see that this naval station is evacuated, and we're pretty sure that these LCSs will be based out of another naval facility somewhere nearby, maybe even within the area of Oman or the middle or Saudi Arabia within the Red Sea, but we have a feeling that they're probably not going to be directly operated out of the Bahrain Naval Station. For now, that is the case, but that will most likely change the closer we get to strikes. We've also heard that the Iranians are trying to flex their muscles even a little bit more out of the Strait of Hormuz, as an announcement did come out today, according to Al Jazeera, that the Iranian Navy will conduct military exercises with China and Russia in the Sea of Oman and the Indian Ocean in the coming days. We do not know how accurate that information is, as we have not been able to hear of any Russian naval movements within this area, or for that matter, Chinese naval movements within this area. It seems that Chinese and Russian naval presence within the Middle East is highly limited at the moment, and we're not really sure where these vessels are going to be arriving from, because according to our information on the channel, we haven't really seen any of these ships nearby. It may be possible that that's just passed under our radar, but nevertheless, we have a feeling that that might just be an Iranian-only exercise with not really a large involvement by the Russians or the Chinese. We've also been able to see that the Russians are considering the situation to be incredibly strenuous this time around, as we have been able to hear from the Russian state news agency TASS that Russia is ready to evacuate its staff from Iran's Bushehr nuclear power plant if necessary. The Bushehr nuclear power plant is a nuclear power plant based out of the city of Bushehr, which you can see right here. This power plant currently has one operational nuclear reactor, and they're currently constructing a second nuclear reactor along with additional supporting buildings, which you can see over here. The Russian Federation has been heavily involved in the construction of the Bushehr nuclear power plant due to civilian nuclear scientists and also government personnel that have been working in this area, helping the Iranians to build this facility. Apparently, the Russians are considering such a grave threat at the moment that the U.S. will conduct imminent strikes that they're actually announcing in advance that they are prepared to evacuate their personnel out of the area and basically remove them from any sort of a sticky situation that might evolve in the next coming days and weeks whenever U.S. strikes are conducted. Even further, the Iranians also appear to be pretty sure that no matter what, a war will be happening, as the mayor of Tehran, Alireza Zakani, has announced that underground parking lots and metro stations across the city will be transformed into war shelters in case of resumed hostilities with Israel and the United States. The civil preparedness within Iran is most likely precautionary, but still making it quite clear that they are ready to go into an armed confrontation with the United States of America, and it may even be backing up our statements that we've heard prior yesterday that the Islamic Republic of Iran is absolutely refusing to negotiate with the United States. This preparation would show that they believe that war is imminent, and therefore they must not be negotiating with the United States of America, because if they were negotiating with the United States and making any leeway, then these sorts of civil preparedness exercises would be entirely unnecessary. We've also heard that within the rest of the world, it doesn't really seem that the Iranians are gaining any favor, especially inside of Europe, as the threats to close the Strait of Hormuz by the IRGC and the continuous action over the decades of the IRGC and their reign of terror throughout the regions of the Middle East have led to the European Union today announcing that the IRGC is officially a terrorist organization, according to the European Union. This is a significant move, as this will open up the groundwork for the European Union to, as an official body, to leverage sanctions and any other form of punitive damages against Iran and the IRGC for their continued actions inside of the region. Moving us on out of that news pertaining to the Middle East, we have also seen that the United States has apparently put some pressure on the Cubans to a significant degree, as we're now hearing that they only have about 15 to 20 days of oil left after the United States has largely tried to force the Venezuelans into not providing any oil to Cuba. We have seen that while the Venezuelan government is starting to pose a lot more resistance to U.S. interests over the past few days, it appears that the general lack of oil shipments that have been seen for the past 3 weeks has started to really make a mark on Cuba, and it appears that their oil reserves are dangerously low and most likely soon to fail. If that is the case, we'll most likely see that the power grid, which only exists in Havana, mind you all, will cease to exist inside of Cuba. And I'm of course exaggerating a little bit, there are a couple of other larger cities within Cuba that do have working electricity and do have a connection to the power grid, but it's wildly small compared to the majority of the population. That means that if the power goes out, it's going to be unfortunate, but I mean, the honest truth is that basically the entire island doesn't have any electricity anyways, so it won't really be that much of an impact, but it will start to put some pressure on the Cuban government. Moving us on out of Cuba and back into Europe, we've also heard that the worsening relations between Europe and the United States has led to further strategic actions being made by the Europeans to see that they largely start to become independent of the United States in most every measure, as the Federal Republic of Germany has announced that they plan on building their own satellite-based missile detection system, which will reduce reliance on the United States, and citing urgent threats and uncertainty over the United States' reliability. That was according to statements that were made by the Germans to Financial Times, and it is showing us that right now there is still even further consequences being created due to the worsening rift between Europe and the United States as the Europeans continue to move towards a more independent approach to their national security interest and even economic pursuits as well. Inside the war in Ukraine, things have not really been going all too good, particularly for the Russians. The Russian Federation has seen that not only is the city of Belgrade home to 330,000 people without power, the city of Murmansk, home to 140,000 people, is also without power, and we've now gotten news today that there is an energy blackout that's happened near St. Petersburg in the city of Sestoretsk. This is incredibly close to the St. Petersburg city area, and as y'all can all see, a power blackout has also enveloped this area, which is home to about another 170,000 people. Additionally, the city of Penza, also home to about 200,000 people, has had a complete energy blackout again as well after Ukrainian attack knocked out the power grid. Larger parts of the Russian Federation appear to be going completely without power at this point, and the Russian Federation has also shown that they're having incredible difficulty getting the lights cumulative and not as sporadic, at least in terms of the amount of time and the amount of damage that it causes, because these power blackouts are largely unfixable now from what we can tell by the Russians. It seems that the Russians now no longer possess the ability to be able to repair their power grid and keep it on as often as they did back in the past, and so this means that the Ukrainian attacks from this point on will be causing generally irreparable damage to Russia's war industry, its civilian infrastructure, and not only that, the electrical grid directly. The Russians are also having an incredibly difficult time keeping up with their contracts that they have for arms procurement and sales to other countries, with the Republic of Belarus announcing that they've gotten a whopping 2, and that's right, 2 brand new Su-30 SMs. Now, this is kind of a little underwhelming. I mean, I think a lot of people can kind of get that idea. Two Su-30 SM-2s is only 2 fighter jets. That's not going to change a war for anyone, much less for Belarus, which generally doesn't even have an army. And we believe that the reason why the batch number is so low, literally being only 2, is because the Russians do not possess the ability to produce these in any large number at all. As a matter of fact, this is just wildly low. I mean, the batch of 2 aircraft may as well be artisanally making each one of these things from the ground up. It's absolutely abysmal, and it is showing us that the Russian economy and the Russian war industries are really having a hard time at this point keeping up with the strain of just normal operations in the midst of the Ukrainians hammering them nightly. Even in the midst of multiple power blackouts inside of Russia and the clear signs that the Russian war industry is going at a snail's pace due to the strain that's being caused on them by the war, the Russian Federation has rejected yet another peace deal, according to the Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. He stated that the comments appear to refer to a proposed energy ceasefire, which Peskov spoke on earlier but declined to comment on. Now, Lavrov has come in and stated that the ceasefire sought by the Ukrainians is absolutely unacceptable, and they will not be searching for a ceasefire or maybe even an actual peace. Ramzan Kadyrov then insisted that they completely demand that no form of negotiation go forward. And we have heard from Ramzan in this statement here, while he's suffering from whatever the hell Kadyrov suffers from, but he stated, I believe the war must be carried through to the end. Negotiations after everything. That has to be done. I'm against negotiations. That was the statement by Ramzan Kadyrov today, once again showing that there is significant pushback inside of Russia to any form of negotiations with Ukraine, and they are still looking for unconditional surrender from the Ukrainians and an absolute victory for the Russian Federation, which will once again never be achieved, and for that point, the war will go on. But with that in mind, folks, I hope you all have enjoyed the news over the course of the day. We're always, of course, entirely honored and extremely appreciative to be able to cover this news for each and every single one of y'all, and we hope that we found that this news video is up to that normal standard. If y'all have enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe, and also make sure to like and comment. We'd love to know that folks enjoy these videos, and also we thank you all so much for waiting around for another news day that's big enough for us to be able to make a short war video. But with that in mind, folks, we thank you all once again for watching, and also if you'd like to support us on Patreon, you can.
Получено, Коля, доброй ночки. Рад слышать тоже. Здесь радиошит Дмитрий знак. 5-9 и 10. Я раз до 15. Александр, станица Новопокровская. Прям. Да, Александр, Новопокровская, отлично, хорошо принято. Ну и передаю далее по группе. Принято. Радио 6, Дима, знак, Роман Антон, Трещука, радио. Я приветствую на частоте, ночи доброй. 5-9. Очень громко слышу. Владимир, город Калач. Прием. Владимир Калач, доброй ночки. Рад слышать. Щука 2 радио. Здесь радио 6, Дмитрий знак. 5-9. 20. Александр, станица Новопокровская. Да, Александр, Удака, станция вышла. У меня просто чуть был притуплен трансивер. Юра рядом работает. Вот, так что до 40 слышал, очень здорово. Что за аппаратурка, Сашка? Да, FT-950 работает, 371. Инвектор V, 17 метров высоты, одним кабелем 2040-80. Ну и в локомотиве стоят еще 2 рогатки с заземлением. Ага, ну здорово. Спасибо, вопросов нет. Всего вам самого хорошего, Юра Микро. Ага, да. Я смотрю я СНСДР Тамбовский включен. И, допустим, Володя, мы с тобой 20, там, ну, чуть за 20. Вот, Александр 30 и больше. То есть он, ну, накрывает шапкой, хотя у нас до Тамбова тут до 2 локтя. Ему еще до Краснодара. Ну, тогда так и должно быть, Саш. Так держать, молодцом прием. Благодарю, ребят. Здоровья вам, родным, близким, на коллективе. Только здоровья пожелаю. Всего доброго. 70. 40 на Тамбовском СДРе. Хорошо, пока 73. Роман, Дима, Трещука, Мария. Кто еще был прием? Ульяна Борис 4, слушаю. Ульяна Борис 4, центр Ульяна. Сергей Горбаков, прием. Да-да, Сереж, рад слышать вас в добром здравии. УБ-4 Двеца Ульяна. Роман Дима, Трещука Мария, 5-9, плюс 30, Юрий Калач, прием. Юрий Калач, громко, очень громко, 30 и за 30, Балаков, Сережа, прием. Хорошо, 2 станции, слушай, Коля. Да, спасибо, это будет 4. Центр Ульяна, я Ульяна, Антон 3, здравствуйте, Сергей, добрый ночи. Николай, славный прием. Да, Коля, ПКС, да? Да. Ну, еще правильно записал, а то, может быть, и попутал. 30 и за 30, Коль, да, очень громко тоже, с хорошим качеством, уже Балакова, УБ-4 ЦСУ прием. Да, принято. Виктор, за микрофон на Владимира. Ага, спасибо. Сереж, здравствуйте. УБ-4 центр Ульяна, Роман Антон, Трещука, радио. 5-9, слышу, очень громко. Владимир, город Калач, прием. Принято, 3, Щука, 2 Павла. 30, 5-9, плюс 30, 35, Балакова, Сергей, УБ-4 ЦСУ, прием. Да, принято. Сереж, исправьте позывной. Роман Антон 3, Щука, радио. 2 Романа. Вопросов нет. И все само хорошее. Микрофон. Да, хорошо. Сереж, спасибо за то, что не прошли мимо. Дай бог здоровья вам, 73 пока, прием. Да, поправил я не Павел, а 2 радио. Прошу прощения. Ребят, что погода там, Юр, подскажи, пожалуйста, как у вас там снег сыпет, нет? Нет, снега нету, тепло, хорошо, плюс 1 градус на улице. Сегодня везде вот такая плюс 1, плюс 2, влажность большая, где-то рядом, но у нас ничего нету, прием. С Москвы там ничего не прет, я тут переживаю среднее Волгу, кого не засыпало, уже не дает снег гребаный южный прием. Нет, это знаешь, у нас с сегодняшнего дня по субботу дождь. Дождь передают, а в воскресенье уже там до 24 ночью ночью снег. Сколько его будет, я не знаю. Но на эти 3 дня дождь прием. Да ничего себе, и дождь, и 24 минус. Охренеть, что-то там... И будет ночью там 0 или минус 1. Наверное, коньки надо будет надевать. Вот, в субботу опять. А в ночь уже, и дождь на весь день нарисован. А в ночь уже там 12 мороза, то есть в субботу, видимо, интересно будет прием. Да,
Now, we're going to give you guys all the information on this and of course the latest videos that we have also received and get your reaction in the live chat as usual. All right. First things first, we can now confirm that the destroyer from the United States, USS Delbert D. Black, has now officially arrived in the Middle East. This was, technically speaking, the second aircraft carrier because there is a third one that has now also been confirmed. We're also just getting some breaking news. The state of Qatar and also Oman are now pushing behind the scenes to prevent any conflict and get Tehran and Washington to have a non-aggression negotiation. Of course, the Islamic Republic have already rejected President Trump's negotiations and a deal, which was a surrender deal, of course, and the US are no longer interested at this point. But yeah, apart from this aircraft carrier, We also have a massive buildup that is continuing. More resources are now being added to the Middle East. So we now have the third aircraft carrier, or the carrier strike group, USS George H.W. Bush, also joining the operation. Now, with everything that's been going on, especially the last day or two, especially right now as we speak over the last few hours, we've had more resources being sent from the United States directly. So we've already had a lot of things from Diego Garcia, we've had a lot of things from the South China Sea and the Middle East itself, and some resources from Europe being sent to the region. We have a lot more coming from America itself, and these are primarily, until now, were the air defense systems to, of course, defend the bases and the regional countries against the IRGC. But we are now hearing that bombers are now being sent from the United States. They are now on their way. Now, an update on the first aircraft carrier that we've been talking about for the past week. It's the USS Abraham Lincoln. It has now gone fully dark, or as we call it, dark in terms of communication. It was difficult to obviously locate it earlier on anyway, but there is no communication now between anybody and USS Abraham Lincoln. That is, of course, planned. It's on purpose. The speculations are that the US military action against the Islamic Republic could be imminent, but there is no actual evidence to suggest that it will be now. But technically speaking, everything is imminent because the military buildup has been happening for days now. And I think what could be imminent is the United States being prepared for the Islamic Republic somehow deciding to do a preemptive attack. Now, obviously, they have to be fully on standby when it comes to that issue. The USS Abraham Lincoln, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with that over the next few hours or few days, but the other two are slightly more visible. Now, the Islamic Republic and their so-called armed forces have now announced they are now confronting the US in the region, near the Persian Gulf. They have now warned the United States that they will be closing the Strait of Hormuz, which is huge, by the way, and said that any military action would ignite an all-out war. Now, they've been saying all-out war for the past, well, technically 47 years, but definitely the last 2 weeks. But they claim to now be ready. If they decide to close the Strait of Hormuz before the Americans manage to block the oil, because the Americans seem to have a plan before actually attacking the territory in Iran, to take control of the Strait of Hormuz, the Persian Gulf, Gulf of Oman, all that area, and to seize the oil tankers and take control. But if the Islamic Republic decides to do that first and close the whole thing, of course, the Americans will be provoked to take more action. And mainly because the Persian Gulf Arab countries are going to be furious because it's going to be affecting their oil prices. And even though right now, the same Arab countries are begging all sides not to do a conflict because, again, money, they care about money. If the Islamic Republic makes the first move, I can assure you, MBS from Saudi will be the first one to pick up the phone to President Trump saying, do something about this. Because it's still going to be affecting the oil prices in general. So now we have the official warning from the IRGC. Warning has now been issued to all the ships, including the US warships, today, on Thursday, the 29th of January. That the Islamic Republic is now planning to do a military drill with the Iranian Navy that includes live firing in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, obviously, this is not a drill. They are saying this is a drill, live firing, but they are doing it in the Strait of Hormuz. They are basically indirectly have already started the operation against the US without calling it a war. You are completely blocking the Strait of Hormuz, but you're saying, oh, it's just a drill. So the United States, we're still waiting for the official response from the Department of War in America, because I'm pretty sure they're not going to be happy. But this has been going on for about an hour, over an hour. the warning that was issued by the Iranian Navy. We don't know the reaction because right now, as we speak, President Trump is holding a cabinet meeting in Washington. So we expect a reaction in the next few hours, couple of hours, from Pete Hegseth and, of course, the rest of the team. The Islamic Republic will now also be joined by both of their key allies, China and Russia. The three countries will be launching a joint naval exercise in the Gulf of Oman and also the Indian Ocean in the coming days. Now, the plan is to basically hold this over the weekend. So, the interesting thing about this is that every weekend they are terrified that the Americans might make a move, right? Every time it gets close to Friday, Saturday, they might come. So they decided to get a bit of help. They got Putin and Winnie the Pooh from Beijing, or Xi Jinping, to say, can you just come and announce that the three of us will be doing a military drill together? It's just a joint exercise. It's not really confrontational. It's just routine. Because if you guys are there, it might delay the inevitable. It might basically prevent the Americans from making the move this weekend, or at least for the next few days. There are some people who were panicking, saying that, oh, that's it. Russia and China are essentially joining the conflict directly. But this is just basically the Russian side and the Chinese side keeping their friends close, because they can't directly throw the Islamic Republic under the bus. Not yet. It's embarrassing for both Russia and China to abandon their friend so early on. But what they can do is just to show that, hey, we're still here. You know, what can we do? Well, we can't really join you in the actual war. But what we can do is, some posturing. So we could do some naval exercise if you want to for a few hours. That would be nice, right? You'll be happy. And the Khamenei said, fine, we'll do that. Why not? The reason for this is because the Russians are actually already prepared to be more defensive rather than offensive. They got Ukraine to worry about. The Russians are already evacuating from Iran anyway. The actual troops and the security of the Russians have now also announced that they are prepared to evacuate their staff from the nuclear site in Bushehr in Iran, which is towards the southern part. The Russians are not prepared to directly, at least for now, help the Islamic Republic with the war with the United States. What they're actually doing is protecting themselves. They're running away. The same thing they did in Syria when Bashar al-Assad was falling. So while they're doing let's make an announcement that we're going to do a naval exercise, they are literally withdrawing their troops and their security and their nuclear staff from, for example, Bushehr. Which, by the way, when they've done this, they've also said that we hope that the United States keep an eye on us. Basically, don't hit any Russians. So I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure that's not really how it works. If you don't want to get hit, it's probably best for you to leave the country. But speaking of the outsiders, the European Union have finally done it. It took them about 2 million years. But earlier on, the European Union's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, announced that repression can't go unanswered. The EU foreign ministers just took the decisive step of designating Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. Any regime that kills thousands of its own people is working towards its own demise. Now, the European Union were not really that keen in designating the IRGC as a terror group. We know that. They could have done it years ago. In fact, they supported them. They gave money to them. The European Union, who've now been forced by President Trump, mostly because both Spain and France were still the last two groups that were objecting to this. President Trump forced them, saying, you have no choice, you got to do it. But the rhetoric from the EU is interesting. They're saying, basically they're implying, we're only doing this, the IRGC is suddenly a terrorist organization because they kill their people. How? How is the IRGC killing their own people, making them an international terrorist organization? What makes the IRGC an international terrorist organization is everything they've done over the last 47 years. You absolute nutters, including killing Europeans. I mean, how many times do we have to go through the same thing? They are not telling you the truth. They are pretending that they're doing this because they care about the Iranian people. Well, maybe you should also care about the European people. And for years and years, the IRGC have been targeting you and your countries and your nations. You didn't do anything about it, just because President Trump forced you, and our friends in Tehran are losing. Probably best we can jump on a bandwagon, as I said about 3 weeks ago. The only country left, major country left, that is refusing to designate the IRGC is the Islamic Republic's old friend, United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We'll talk about them in a second, but I'm going to show you the response from the foreign policy chief, Callas.
We are putting new sanctions on the list, and I also expect that we agree on listing the Iran Revolutionary Guard on the terrorist list. This will put them on the same footing with Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Daesh. If you act as a terrorist, you should also be treated as a terrorist. It is clear what we see, the death toll in the protests that were in Iran and the means that were taken by the regime are really, really severe. So that's why we are also sending a clear message that if you are suppressing people, it has a price, and you will be also sanctioned for that.
Suddenly they care, right? But the problem here right now is that the United Kingdom, and it's not, again, as I've been saying, it's nothing to do with Keir Starmer or the Labour government. This is the problem with the British state. The British state, including the Foreign Office and the Palace. For years and years, they, obviously in the 1970s, with the help of Jimmy Carter, US Democrats, MI6 decided to help the Ayatollahs take over. The plan was to prevent the Soviet Union from taking over Iran during the Cold War. It backfired, but the Americans immediately changed their mind and withdrew, and the IRGC declared war on America. Ronald Reagan came, everything changed. The British state didn't really change its policy. They stayed quiet, but they continued to support and work with the IRGC. The IRGC have an official headquarters in the middle of London, in central London, in Maidabel. Funded and controlled by Ali Khamenei from a bunker in Tehran. It's now been a few hours. Again, on Thursday, the 29th of January. We're still waiting for the British government to make up its mind. I have a feeling that the truth is the president will be forcing the United Kingdom to also do the same thing. But we don't know if it's going to be this week or next week. Now, the Iranian Navy have also, obviously, as I said, announced that their live fire exercise will be beginning in just outside of Bandar Abbas. So the Strait of Hormuz, which is kind of in between the Gulf of Oman and the Persian Gulf, there's a tiny section, which you can see at the bottom, the red bit. There's a port, Bandar Abbas, huge, very important, near UAE, near everything else. Bandar Abbas also had major uprisings over the last month or so, literally a month. Their live fire drill is going to be starting near Bandar Abbas, but they're going to be doing it from Sunday. So, but the announcement has been made now because they want to be able to close it from Friday to Saturday so that they could start it on Sunday. The plan, as I said, is to basically prevent the Americans from making a move. Okay. People in Iran are not giving up the fight. More videos are coming, including this man who said, I'm not going to give up. We have to go out there. We have to continue the fight back. Let's watch this, English subtitles.
بابا نرو اگه برات اتفاقی بیفته چی؟ چرا نرم دادا دخل با خرجم نمیخونه. از صبح تا شب دارم این سگ کار میکنم. نمیشه. مگه ترسی دارم که چیزی از دست بدم؟ چرا نرم؟ مامان بابام جلوی چشمام دارم پرپر میشن، هیچ گویی نمیتونم بخورم. مامان من آرزوش منو تو لباس دامادی ببینه. من خودم آرزومه فردا کفم پیچم کنن، خاکم کنن. چرا نرم؟ بذار برم که حداقل شبا با عذاب وجدان نخوابم. بذار برم که فردا اگه بچم ازم پرسید چی کار کردی